Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to bring you a book haul. This is predominantly going to be made out of horror books, but there are some exceptions. There's a thriller, science fiction, and true crime in here, and I'm really excited to show you all the books I have here. This is made up of books that I received from publishers, as well as some very generous gifts from some wonderful online friends. And I do want to acknowledge right off the bat that I realize that it's a real privilege to not only receive books from publishers, but also to have such generous people in my life. So I realize all of that, but I do think the book hauls are really fun to share with you. It gives you an idea of the books that I'm planning on reading in the next few months, because I really do try to read my review copies and the books that I own right away, so that I can turn around and give you all reviews. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk about some of the review copies, and this first book I am so excited to show you, and that is a beautiful copy of Kill River 3 by Cameron Rubik, which is a piece of slasher horror. It's technically the third book, but I won't spoil anything here. And this is all about a young girl who, along with her friends, has to survive a killer that is possibly taking out people in water parks. And you know, I've loved all the previous books in the series, and I love this one just as much. I have already reviewed it on my channel, so if I remember, I'm going to link that video down below if you want my further thoughts, which again will be spoiler free. But I highly recommend this series. It's one that is all based around 80s styles of slasher movies, and it's just a love letter to those kind of films. And I just enjoy them. They're very summery, they're very action-packed, and just so much fun. And I also want to point out the artwork on this cover, because if you aren't aware, the author Cameron Rubik does his own pictures, and he basically paints them and then turns them into cover art. For a lot of other indie authors, doing your own cover art is not a great thing, but I think Cameron Rubik is one of the most talented cover artists out there, and I always love what he does, so I hope this shows up nicely on camera, because I think this new one is absolutely brilliant. And the other thing I want to mention, which I didn't bring up in my review, but is really, really cool, is if you flip to the back of this book, in the afterword, of course, the author goes through their acknowledgements, and he says, "I also have to thank Cameron Chaney, who's awesome by the way, and Rachel from the Shades of Orange BookTube channel. They were the first big booktuber and reviewers to take an interest in my Kill River stories, and have done so much to help me spread the word about them over the years. I can't thank them enough for all their videos, tweets, Instagram posts, podcast mentions, as well as hosting things like the Blatty Beach Read-Along, and just sending many reviewers my way." So I just want to say thank you for Cameron including me in the acknowledgements. That's a first for me, and really blew my mind. I was so honored, and I just was, tickled pink to see that. So if you haven't read this one yet, definitely recommend going back to Kill River, the first book, and binging through this trilogy and the rest of Cameron Rubik's work. Love them so much. Next, I want to mention Crazy Times by Scott Cole. This is one that I received from the author, and again have already reviewed, so I'll link that video down below. And he was so kind as to send me a signed copy which says, "Hi Rachel, hope you are staying safe in these crazy times." And this book was so timely. It's basically about a man who is going about his life, and things just get crazier and crazier and spin out of control. It's not the same as what's been happening in the world in 2020, but it still felt really, really timely and just really fun. So if you are looking for a bonkers, over-the-top story about people going absolutely crazy, this is a really fun way to spend an afternoon with an awesome horror novella. Next, I want to talk about a book I haven't read but plan to do so very soon, and that is The Glare by Margot Harrison. This is actually a piece of young adult horror, which you know I don't read a lot of and I don't accept a lot for review, but the premise sounded so good that I had to say yes. And this follows a young girl who lived a very isolated life with her mother. They lived away from the city, and her mother was very paranoid about her daughter using technology, specifically cell phones, and so she never had access to that technology and instead really lived off the grid. Now she's going to live with her father for a while and is finally getting access to cell phones and normal life, and is trying to integrate into there. This story is also a horror thriller, as I mentioned, so those aspects come in because there is a game on the dark web that is possibly causing people to die. And that's the part that that really caught my attention because if you don't know, I really enjoy contemporary horror that includes modern technology and social media. It's something that just really speaks to me because I find it really different. And so I was very excited to pick this one up. I plan to read it soon because I believe it comes out or came out mid-July, so I will be reporting back as soon as I can with more thoughts. But definitely sounds fun, and I'd love to know, would you like to see a whole video on horror books that incorporate technology and social media? Because I think I have enough recommendations, I could probably put that together. So let me know if you'd actually watch that. Next, I have a horror novella called Starving Ghosts in Every Thread by Eric LaRocca. This is one that I received from the author for review, and I'm really excited to get to it. The short synopsis is that it follows a girl with a parasitic condition where she feeds off the emotions of other people. In her small town, she meets another girl who has her own dark secrets, and they possibly develop a romance between the two of them. If you don't know, I'm a huge fan of queer, diverse horror, and I understand the author himself is an openly gay man, so I definitely appreciate those own voices stories. And I've just heard that this one is really creepy. I like the idea of that parasitic angle where someone is just feeding off of other people. So I'm definitely going to be getting to this one soon. Again, I will be letting you know my further thoughts, but I'm highly anticipating enjoying this one. And you might have caught it on Twitter, but a little ways back, I was whining online, which is something I really shouldn't do and try to avoid. But I basically got a pay cut at my job and I was just feeling sorry for myself and just struggling online with the fact that I really felt like I couldn't buy myself any books. And I had so many fantastic people reach out and just offer their sympathy and thanks. And one author basically reached out and asked if I was interested in reading and reviewing any of his books as a way to give myself something to read. And I said yes, 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 because before this author reached out, I've actually been dying to read his books for quite a while, but I'm always really shy to be the one to reach out to the author, so I usually wait for them to contact me. So that author was Matt Sarafini, and I requested 2 books from him. The first one is actually a novella called Rite of Extinction, and this is about a private investigator that is trying to track down the murderer of their daughter. They end up in a town, and there are just some very dark secrets. And I don't almost want to know more about this book because people say that you just need to go into it and experience it for yourself. But I've heard amazing things about this book. I've seen so many 5-star reviews. I've seen this book show up on so many people's favorite lists, and I'm just highly anticipating loving it as much as everyone else. I'm looking for another favorite this year, and I'm really hoping that this will be that. The other book I requested from the author was a full-length novel, and that is Under the Blade. And this is about a woman who, as a teenager, survived a terrible massacre at a summer camp where she was a counselor, and now as an adult she's down on her luck and needing money, so she agrees to a publishing deal which involves her going back and reliving those experiences. This book is supposed to be similar to the Friday the 13th movies, which I actually have not watched, but I think I probably should, so please let me know. I feel like I at least need to watch the first one just so I understand more of the context around Jason, but I'm very excited for this one. If you don't know, I love a good slasher. I've heard that this one is very well written and is just a great combination of action with some very good plotting and character work. And yeah, I'm just really in the mood for this, so I'll probably be picking this up very soon. And because I always forget to mention it, both those books were signed. So for Rites of Extinction, he said, "For Rachel, what will you sacrifice?" And then in Under the Blade, he also left a little note saying Camp Forest Grove has a death curse, which sounds fun. Now, another author actually reached out to me when I sent out that sad little tweet complaining about my work situation, and that author was David Demcheck, who, if you're not familiar, is the talented author who wrote The Bone Mother, which is a novel that reads more like a short story collection, and one I highly recommend, especially for anyone looking for really different queer horror. And he actually offered to send me books off of my own Amazon wish list, so not even sending me his own books. And I am just overwhelmed by his generosity. He sent me not only 1, but 3 books as a wonderful care package, so I want to share those here. The first one he sent is Come Closer by Sarah Grand, which is one of my all-time favorite possession stories. It is a novella that packs an amazing punch because it is told in a first-person perspective. So you get the question of, is the girl crazy or is she possibly possessed? And I just want to reread this book. So I'm so grateful to have a copy, and a gorgeous copy at that, because again, it's one I want to revisit. And I know novellas are always a little bit more expensive for the page number, and so it's one I wanted to buy, but I keep holding off, so I'm just grateful to now have a copy of. The next book he sent was actually a true crime book, and again, another favorite of mine. That is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. I have, of course, already read this and am obsessed with this case. And because of that, I want to reread this book, revisit all of the details. I have now watched or listened to different media pieces on the Golden State Killer, and I just want to go back to her story, her telling of the events, and her piecing it together. I originally read this book before all the news broke and the murderer was caught, but I'm grateful again to have a copy because I'm a huge rereader and I've been dying to just comb through this story once more again. And by story, I understand that of course this is nonfiction, true events and so forth, but it's just such an incredible tale. And the third book that he sent was The Changeling by Victor LaValle, which, if you don't know, is one of my new all-time favorite books because I recently read it, reviewed it, and gushed about it in a recent video. So I'll try to link to that down below if you want to know more. But I love this book so much because it's such a unique take on the horror genre that mixes in elements of fantasy and fairy tales. And it's just so different than anything I've read before, which is so refreshing. This is not only going to be a favorite of the year, but probably an all-time favorite, which means that I'm incredibly grateful to have my own beautiful copy so that I can revisit this story, because I know that at least once a year I'm going to be pulling this off my shelf and re-experiencing it, because I just love to do that with all of my favorites. And again, I'm so thankful for David Demcheck for sending all three of these books. And of course, I'm very excited for when David Demcheck comes out with his next book, which I was already planning on reading and reviewing whenever that is. So no pressure there, but I'm looking forward to that and just being able to pay forward some of the generosity that I've received from so many authors and fellow reviewers and just online friends. And speaking of generous friends, I have to talk about a book that my black-hearted friend Sandy sent along, and that is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. I think everyone knows about this classic tale of exorcism, and I have read this book, but I read it years ago, and I feel like it's about time that I reread it, and I just really need to re-experience it for myself, especially now that I'm more familiar with the horror genre. I really want to see how it compares to other horror classics I've read. So I'm thinking that we're gonna do a reread of it together. We're planning on doing it in October. And I would love to know for anyone else, do you also plan your Halloween TBR months and months in advance? Because I'm already thinking about it, I'm already planning, and I keep rearranging which books I want to read in October. But I'm really looking forward to reading this along with Sandy and discussing it with her online. She is just so wonderful and has been so generous over these last few months. So I'm so thankful. You are my bookish fairy or dark-hearted friend, which probably fits you better. And thank you again so much. And as I previously mentioned, my birthday is at the end of July, so I received an early birthday present from one of my other online bookish friends, and that is from Justine from I Should Read That. She sent me this beautiful copy of A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, which is the second book in the Wayfarer series. It's one I've already read, and it's my absolute favorite in the series. This book I can't really talk about without spoiling the first book, but I'll just let you know that it's a book that deals with artificial intelligence and motherhood, which are two of my favorite topics to tackle in science fiction. It's one of Justine's favorite books, and it's also one of my favorite books, and again, one that I definitely want to reread because I loved it so much the first time around, and I tend to love books even more when I revisit them. If you aren't familiar with Justine's channel, I definitely recommend checking her out. What I love so much about her channel is the fact that she reads and reviews a lot of new releases that are coming out. So if you want to know if a certain book lives up to the hype, she'll be the best one to tell you. She reads mostly adult science fiction fantasy, but also some YA and some other genres, and is just a lovely person and is oh so generous. So thank you again, Justine, for sending this. And finally, we have reached the end of this video, which is what I want to call the Genji Ito section. And the first book I want to show you here is Frankenstein. This is a collection of short stories as well as a retelling of the classic story of Frankenstein, all done by the talented manga horror author. This is actually a library book, so the only library book in this haul. And for those of you that are friends with me online, you've probably heard me whine that my library is basically closed. They have started doing curbside pickup, but they're only allowing curbside pickup for books that are already in the library. And I live in a really small town with a terrible collection of science fiction and horror, and by terrible I just mean that they own very few books. But this book I requested way back in March and has been sitting held captive on the hold shelf since March, and so they finally released it to me so I could read it, because this book came from a different city in my province. So I'm very grateful to read this book, because I know once I return it, I probably won't be able to access it again, because my library currently again is not transferring books between libraries, which is really frustrating, which is the whole reason I wanted to have curbside pickup, is so that I could actually get my hands on some books. But basically I can go and pick up the like 5 Stephen King books that my library owns. So I'm very grateful to have this one. I have started reading it, and I will be reporting back with more thoughts once I have finished it. But I've got to say, Frankenstein is not my favorite classic, and I was really surprised that this retelling is very true to the original story. So it's maybe not my favorite of his collection so far, but I'm only halfway through, so I'll keep you posted. And also by Genji Ito, we have No Longer Human. This is a book that was sent to me by one of my so generous online friends, Belle. She actually has an Instagram account that I'm going to have linked down below, because she, or rather her 2 adorable black cats, review books online, and she reads a lot of the same books I do. We actually read a lot of books together, and she reads a lot of horror, thrillers, etc. And we are both huge fans of Genji Ito. So when I was complaining about the fact that my library is not transferring books between libraries and was basically closed at the time, she offered to send me this book, because I had no idea, and still don't have any idea, when I'd be able to get it from my library. This one is a little bit different than Genji Ito's other work, because it's actually a retelling of a very classic Japanese story about a man who is having a lot of anxiety and in a downward spiral. I kind of have read the synopsis 3 times and I still can't really paraphrase it very well, so I'll report back once I've read it, because then I'll be able to give you a proper synopsis. But I'm so grateful for Belle for sending this, and if you are on Instagram, I definitely recommend checking out her Kittens account, because I really enjoy their reviews of her books. Last book I have to show you in this haul is actually one that I purchased myself. I mentioned that my birthday's at the end of the month, and when I asked my husband if he was getting me anything, it didn't sound like he was, and I was just kind of feeling sorry for myself, because it's a birthday that I'm going to be staying in and probably not doing a lot for, and so I just wanted to get something for my birthday. And so I did decide to treat myself, and so I bought myself a really nice book, and I think that this might be something I start to do maybe once a year for my birthday. And I really want to start collecting the rest of Genji Ito's books, the ones that I don't have, because they are just beautiful copies. They're books that I'm never going to be able to get secondhand. They're just not going to show up in my used bookstore, I know. And so I got myself a copy of Smash. This is one of his short story collections and has some of my favorite stories in it. So I was just really excited to purchase this. Again, it was kind of more expensive. I think it was like $28 before tax. And normally I try not to spend more than like $10, $15 max on a book. But again, I was like, it's my birthday. I never buy books. I just really wanted to treat myself. So this is just a gorgeous edition. It's all hardcover, and definitely one that I'm going to read and reread. And I just look forward to having this on my shelf. So again, I can pull it out whenever I just need a really creepy story to just have fun with at night or something like that. So I'm very excited to have this one. So happy birthday to me. So that is it for this book haul. I feel like I have a lot of amazing books here, and I'm so excited to get to the ones that I have not read yet. So of the books I mentioned that I haven't read, which ones would you like me to prioritize for review? As always, I will try to get to all of them in a timely basis, because that's something that's really important to me as a reviewer. But I definitely want to know which ones caught your attention, and just share with me, what do you like to buy for yourself for your birthday? Are you also someone that buys yourself a special book every year? Because I think that would be a really nice tradition for me to start. So I like the idea. I think I'm going to do that. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I read a lot of horror, science fiction, thrillers, and fantasy. Otherwise, I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.